Okay, hi everybody. I just wanted to welcome everyone. My name is Darren Fox. I'm an alumni relations officer with Brock University. And I'm just going to kind of quickly start this all with just a quick couple questions, just if you can answer in the chat, and will, sort of indulge me a little bit, but just want to get a sense of where everybody is from. So if you can quickly type in the chat, maybe where it is you are from today. Okay, Brampton, Niagara. Timmins, Ottawa, Catherine's.
Nice.
Okay. All right. Wow, Brussels.
Brussels.
Okay, someone just won the award for furthest away. I was going to give Calgary and Colorado there, but sorry, Brussels just beat you out, guys. And if I'm looking at who did put that anyways, good to see you guys here anyways, and I guess not in a bit of a virtual sense. Aaron Kaipanen anyways, we went to Brock together, as well as Beth McCauley. So quick shout out to you guys, Calgary and Colorado. Point being basically is that it's great that we can engage alumni in such a broad format at this point, that we can reach out to all of you. You can help come and participate. You don't have to physically be there. So, hey, sort of what we've been able to now sort of do more anyways with the pandemic, and it's allowed us, especially with, as Lisa and I were sort of talking about, the technology definitely has changed. It went into a bit of a hyperdrive. So, good that we can kind of all connect like this and be able to do something like this and have someone like Lisa, as a Brock alumnus, being able to, provide us with the content for today. So I will get started with sort of introducing Lisa. She's a Brock alumna, graduated with a BBA in 2000, as a leadership vision coach and human resource cultural consultant. Her passion is teaching small and medium business leaders to effectively lead their teams by creating exceptional workplace cultures. She's a certified human resources leader, a certified DISC and True Colors facilitator, and holds a certificate in advanced resolution. Most recently, she finished all the requirements to be a distinguished Toastmaster. She also holds the title stepmom to 2 teens and mom to her dog, Sandy. So I will let Lisa now take it away.
Thanks, Darren. That was great. Thanks for asking everyone where they're from. That's awesome to see where everybody is now. So just to add a little bit on to what was already shared, I've been in human resources for 20 years. So as soon as I left Brock, I went straight into human resources, which is not common. I had to take 6-month contracts for about 2 years because they want you to have experience before you're in HR. But that was my way to deal with it. I've been coaching leaders now as far as the official coaching for 11 years, but it's probably longer than that because in HR, that's what I did. I really coached all the leaders. I've been doing this business now full-time for 7 years. And I've been a leader at Toastmasters, the HRPA, as well as Rotary. And specifically at Toastmasters, because of where I live, so I don't know if you saw in the comments, but I'm from Timmins, Ontario. So where I live, we have a huge geographic area and not a lot of people. So when you're a leader at things like Rotary or Toastmasters, the different leadership roles you take, they end up being very distant. So I've been doing these virtual leadership roles for a couple of years now, and they've been it's been interesting, and it's a whole new ball game. And I'm sure some of you have dealt that. And just to add to that, how many of you are leading virtual teams now? And just if you could also mention that, yes, you're leading a virtual team. And was it a surprise because of COVID, or was this just you're leading virtual teams? So again, just share in the chat. As we go through, if you have any questions, put it in I have both the chat and the Q&A open. But if you have a specific question, please put it in the Q&A. Sometimes in the chat, when a whole bunch of people answer at the same time, it just goes through so quickly that I don't necessarily see everything. So I'm just seeing all the answers now. Yes, surprise, more since COVID, running international and national teams virtually. Oh, Isabella, that's awesome. I'll add some things, and I didn't know what I was, who I was going to see here today, so I didn't add very much about the international piece, but there is some things to deal with as far as that goes. Work in HR as well and looking for ways to help our staff. Awesome. Okay, Erin, you're working in higher ed, so been working remote since March and managing a team remotely. So I'm not surprised, just quickly from all of the answers I see, is that there's a few of you who've been doing this just because, and there's others who it's, kind of driven by COVID. So what I'm going to go through today, I've been coaching for a few years. So I have a foundation that I teach from. So I want to talk about that very quickly at the beginning. And then we'll talk a little bit about so that's the how you add value as a leader and the mission, vision, and values. And then I'm going to go into the tips on leading virtual teams and the leader's responsibility in that. I'm going to suggest, so as I said, feel free to ask questions as we go. I see Amanda's already put a question in, perfect. And so as we go, feel free to do that. I will just answer them live, then I can see them. Once I've answered them, they'll, I can put them away, so then I know as more questions come through. So that's our agenda. So I'll give quickly my definition of leadership. And this came from a company I was working at that we had some problems with. People weren't telling us when they were getting hurt, and consequently, people were dying on the job. They referred to it as our dirty little secret that people were dying. So they did a whole rework of our culture. And what they did was they brought people from all over the country, the company, which was international. It's a Canadian company, but it was international. They brought us all into the US, and they sat us down and went, okay, what's going on? Why is this happening? And this definition of leadership came out at that time. And so what was our responsibility as far as a leader? It's a short sentence, but it has a lot of a big meaning to it. So my definition of a leader is that we model, teach, create, and develop commitment to personal responsibility with the idea of moving towards mutual accountability. Now, I've been teaching this a long time, and it's not as easy as you think. I personally went through a medical issue. I had half my thyroid removed, and they can't figure out why, but I have very little energy now. So where I used to be able to do like P90X and CrossFit, now I can do 10 minutes of exercise, and that's about it. If I can get through the hour, but if I get through an hour, the next 2 days I'll be on the couch. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on. Hasn't changed for a while, so I've just accepted now that it's the 10 minutes. But through that, I really struggled with this because I wasn't modeling the behavior that I was teaching people through it because I was so tired. So we model the behavior we're looking for, and we'll talk a bit in a minute about the mission and vision. And we want these all to match. So how you show up every day needs to match what you're expecting from your team. Sometimes we have to teach. So if someone's going off track or doesn't understand, we teach what we're expecting, and that looks like a couple of different things. It looks like what we learned in school, so the teaching in that way. It also looks like, hey, you know what, you've done this way, this is why we do it. Or it just looks like bringing the team together and having that discussion and just behaving in that way. So again, that modeling. Then we create an environment that allows what we're looking for. So this one I usually do in the negative side. So if you say you're the friendliest place in the world to work, and then you're yelling at your staff in the back room, you're not the friendliest place to work. You're not the friendliest to your customers either, because people are getting yelled at in the back room. And McDonald's is my usual example because we've all seen someone getting yelled at in the back of McDonald's. If I could get you to raise your hands. There's always been a few people saying them. You can order a smile on the menu, but then you see the kid getting yelled at in the back. Well, that's not the friendliest place to be if you see somebody getting yelled at in the back, right where the customers can see. So you need to create an environment that is what you're looking for. So if you want people to be open and speak to you, then don't be rolling your eyes when they come in, which seems pretty obvious, but sometimes we do it, or berate them when they tell you that they've made a mistake, those kind of things. So you need to create that environment that people will be willing to do what you're asking them to. And then help develop that commitment. to that personal responsibility. So making sure that everyone is taking care of what they're supposed to be taking care of. Now, how do you add value? When we move into the leadership role, this is actually from Brene Brown, and she does a lot of research on this stuff. When she stepped into she started researching leaders, what she discovered is they don't know how they add value anymore. So if you think about your day as a leader, when we were doing the work, we had a tangible at the end of the day. So depending what it was, if you're making car parts, you had a part at the end of the day. If you were doing more admin role, you'd have a spreadsheet or emails or a Word document, something at the end of the day that you know you could hold in your hand, I completed this. Well, some of it, Word document, we don't necessarily print now, but you could if you wanted to. So it's something tangible you can hold. In that leadership role, though, you will run the whole day, and at the end of the day think, what did I accomplish? And did I accomplish anything? Sometimes it doesn't feel like we did, but we did, because we're no longer the ones doing, we're now the ones coordinating what needs doing and making sure that we're there to support the team in what they need. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I want to make sure that everyone is aware about vision and mission. And this is really important to have, not only, say you're in a corporation, not only the corporate one, but each team should have a vision and a mission as well. That obviously is connected with the corporation's one so that everybody's moving towards the same thing. But it's important for your team to know what their role is in that larger mission or vision. So a vision provides the inspiration for your future, and the mission talks about what you do now. If you need to think about it, and sometimes these are unclear, your vision is something that's far reaching that you will never get to. And your mission is, if you think more of a military mission, so it's a specific group of people working together towards a specific task. So that's the separation between the two. I used to work for Magna International. They're probably the best company I ever worked for, because they were the clearest in their expectations of people. The first line, it wasn't written as a vision, but it really has stuck in my head. I haven't been there for almost 20 years now. About 15 years since I left the company, and it still sticks in my mind. They had something called the Magna Charter, which is loosely based on the Magna Carta. It was basically the rules you could expect to, or what you would expect as an employee from them. And the first one said job security. That was the title. The line underneath said, no one can guarantee job security. It's not a possibility. We try to guarantee job security by making a better product and a better price. And so that for me stuck in as their vision. I'm sure if you go to the website, there is an actual vision, but that was for me what it was. And it really told us what we were doing. Everyone at the company knew that we were in a constant state of trying to make the product better and to do it cheaper. Because the better we did, the more money we made, and the more bonus we got, all of those good things. And it was everyone from the person who swept the floor to HR, everyone. So it was really clear. So you want something that's that clear. This is what we're all doing here. And then everyone knows their role in that. And again, missions, think more of a military mission. The other piece is values. And I've seen a lot of companies that haven't thought this out. So it's really important to do that. One, you should know your own values. There's a tons of different ways to do that. I'm not going to go into that here because we want to get to the meat of what this is. But you should be aware of your own core values, as well as the company should have some clear values. The clearer you are in all three of these, the better. So all three work together. You don't want to be the company, like I said, like McDonald's saying you're the friendliest place and then yelling at people in the back room. If you have a value around innovation, or if you have a vision that includes innovation, you're going to want that as a value as well. If you're always saying, when we said we're doing a better product at a better price, well, innovation was one of the values. So it's really important that all three match. And the reason for this is that it will help in decision making. And that's not just for the leader, that's for everyone. If you're really clear on your vision, mission, and values, everyone can make decisions, and the leader isn't required to be there for every decision because everyone knows where we're headed. How I put it is, you're putting you're kind of putting up guideposts along a road. So this is the road we're headed. The vision is that way. This is our current mission. And these are your guideposts. Stay within the guideposts. If you want to move the guideposts, we have a different discussion, but you have all of this room in here to be creative. But these are the guideposts, and that's what this is doing. So it helps clarify to the team what's expected, and it's part of building trust. With the caveat, and I'll talk about this again later, with the caveat, if your actions match what you say. So if your actions don't match what you say, people will catch on really quickly and the trust will erode very, very quickly. The other reason for having these clarified is it will build team efficiency and effectiveness, and it will work on your culture and creating a culture that you want, not one that's just creates on its own. So just quickly on team culture, how a leader controls the culture is how we show up every day, how and when we communicate, what behaviors we accept from the team members, and how we deal with team members who are showing inappropriate behavior. So your team culture is really important, and it's also done by the stories that are being told. So if your team are very frustrated, and if we go back to the last slide where I talked about trust, if no one trusts what's happening at the company, then they're going to start to tell sort of negative stories, and your culture will slip very quickly. It won't be what you wanted. So any questions on any of that before I move on? I wanted to do that fairly quickly, but I felt it was important to sort of get the basis so I don't have to go back and explain it each slide after. Okay, so again, as I said, just go in the Q&A and ask questions as we're going. I don't think I see anything more in the chat at the moment. So going into virtual teams, your foundation doesn't change. All of that remains the same. So you're not worried about changing your vision. Possibly the mission will change. The values should stay the same, but the how you do things will change. So where we used to be able to walk across the hall and say hi to someone, we can't do that now. So there's those informal chats have to be formalized, which seems a bit ridiculous, but it needs to happen in that way. You have to find a way to have those informal meetings where you can just chat or just check in on someone. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't mean that you don't have the informal conversations. I think you need them, and I think you actually need them more when you are virtual. And there's lots of reason for that. But the foundation does stay the same. So whatever your mission and vision was, that's still there, and your values as well. So a couple of things to talk about, and then I'll go into the leadership part of things. Think about your structure. So many of us were tossed into this, where we're all used to working in person, and suddenly we're working from home. I've been attending the HR conferences for years, and they've been saying for the last few years that we were going to this anyway. COVID just sped this up. So the virtual teams have been going on for some time, and I don't remember who said it, even in our chat, that they've been leading virtual teams for some time. That we've been moving there. I've met Isabella, right? Thanks. So this has been going on for some time. I've met a ton of people online who have had virtual teams for years, and that's all they ever had. And they've all been working for their home for years now. And they actually, some have never met anyone in person because they're all over the world. So what I did when I was starting this is I thought, well, I'd like to know what works best. And so I went to the Harvard Business Review. In their studies, they found that virtual teams are best when they're 4 to 5 people. Once it gets beyond that, things start to fall downhill. And just to be clear, the worst teams are 13 and over. So once you hit 13 people, things really start to fall apart. The communication gets really difficult. That's not in person. That is when we are virtual. So you want smaller teams are better in a virtual environment. Beyond the 5 members, what they said starts to happen is that people start to reduce their effort because they feel less responsible for the output. Oh, nice. Isabella has never met your senior project manager who resides in Alabama. That's awesome. So yeah, this is happening more and more. So things start to fall apart because people start to reduce their effort because they don't feel as responsible for the output. And I'm going to assume everybody took the business course, so I'm going to do this very quickly. But do you guys remember the light studies? I mean, it was done years ago. We learned this before I graduated, and hopefully they're still sharing this. But what the gist of it is that they wanted to test lighting on productivity. And so they started doing this study, and they would dim the lights or raise the lights and figure things out. But it didn't matter what they did with the lights. I think what they were doing was they kept dimming them to see if productivity lessened, and it didn't. It just kept getting more and more. The team just kept doing better. And what they discovered was it was because they felt a part of something. And that study has always stayed with me. And I think it's relevant now too. So it's kind of the same concept, is that the further we are from the output, the harder it is for us to see how we're providing value. So it's really important in those virtual teams to make sure that your team is aware and how they add value and effectively that they're needed. Being virtual definitely does make things harder for communication. So if you were tossed into this, and obviously several of you were, consider what your current structure is, and if there's a way that you can maybe change the structure so you're closer to that 4 or 5 team members. So maybe it's not a department thing anymore. Maybe you start looking at cross-functional teams. That was one of the suggestions in the Harvard study. Or maybe smaller teams within your department. So if you have a team of like 13 to 15, maybe you split them up into sort of 5 teams with 3 teams with about 5 members each, so that they each have different tasks that they're working on, so they're closer to that output. I'm not going to go deep into that because there's too many people to go through what everybody could be dealing with. But if you have questions, please, feel free to toss them in. We can discuss more. You still want to meet as a full team. So even if you do have that team of 15, you want to meet as a full team, but only when required. It gets harder and harder the more people that are on the line to get everybody talking and to make sure everyone still feels a part of the team. So the next piece is communication. Communication, definitely harder online, but it becomes even more important. Like I said, you can't just walk across the hall and talk to people. You can't meet at the water cooler, but it's still really important to have those team meetings. And I would say it's still important to have those team meetings where the informal chat happens as well. I haven't done this, well, actually I have, that's not true, but I'll give you the example when I was actually in person. And one of the companies I worked for, I had 10 people on my team. But I had not just human resources, I had public relations, First Nations, and health and safety reporting to me. So I had 3 teams sort of within the team. And what we would do is every Monday morning, because I couldn't keep track of where everybody was every week, and sometimes I got asked where they were, I would meet with them on Monday morning, and we would go around the table 10-15 minutes and just say, okay, this is what I've got going on this week. So everybody was aware of where everybody was going to be. Those meetings never lasted less than 30 minutes. And the reason being is we all arrived at 10 a.m. and the first 15 minutes was 15 to 20 minutes actually was chatting. And then everybody could tell me what they were doing in 10 minutes. But that 20 minutes was so important because it helped build that team camaraderie, and there was lots of laughter and things like that. So it was a really important piece. You can continue that online when you bring the meetings together. I know a lot of companies went to what they're calling water cooler meetings, which go over well sometimes and not so well. So you may want to just include it with another meeting. I have a friend who has no interest in going to the water cooler meeting, but she does miss talking to the team. So it's a bizarre thing. I think it's because she's introverted. She doesn't want to go. So that's the team meeting. So you may want to just allow that informal conversation to either start the meeting or to end the meeting, one of the two, but you still need that stuff happening. So I think as we, hopefully you guys, I'm not sure if you can see all this in the chat, but when Isabella said, she's never met her project manager, but they're good friends and their families know each other virtually. And that's still important. We need to know each other as people. Allison, yes, the thing you miss the most is the informal chat before and after meetings. And see, when I was putting this together, I wasn't thinking about the volunteer teams I've worked on, and we always did that too. So I remember I said with Toastmasters, I had lots of virtual teams because our area is so big, we would only ever meet on Zoom. And I think a couple of times a year we met in person. But when we did that, same thing, the beginning of the meeting was we'd come in and we'd chat, and then I would get the meeting going fairly on time. So we might chat for maybe 5 minutes, get the meeting going. And then if anyone wants to stay on after, they're welcome to. And that's how we leave it, because some people obviously have to leave right on time. I'm Malik. I hope that's how you say that name. Like everyone else, we've had to, yes. I don't know if everyone can see that, so I will read it. But Malik says, I'm a volunteer and executive on a professional association board. Like everyone else, we've had to move our work online and are communicating online and in virtual teams. Yes. We have a member who is also a volunteer, but who is disengaged, isn't holding up their responsibilities, and is often behind on tasks, and makes promises on delivering products, but doesn't do so. Given that this work is voluntary, how do we engage this person and help them improve their performance? We've communicated gently and directly with this person without much improvement. What else can we do? So what I can say is I would have a very direct conversation with that person, and just say, look, the team really needs you. And I'm sure that you've tried some of this already, but I had to do that recently with my team as well. So I'm running I'm the president of my Toastmasters group here. And I actually brought them all in because they weren't responding to emails. And so one of the things I said was, first, okay, is email the best way? Is there some other way you'd like me to communicate to you? And they all said, no, email's fine. And I said, okay, well, it's not because nobody's responding. So I was very honest about it. It's clearly not okay because you aren't responding, and I'm asking very direct questions. So you can say that stuff without being unkind, and because it's just a fact. I think sometimes we worry about hurting someone's feeling, but really it was just a fact. So for me, it was 3 others. So I was able to say, okay, I can't believe that you're saying email is the right way because no one's responding. So if you're telling me that it's the right way, you're going to all start responding. And they have since, just because it was called out. So sometimes you have to have that very direct conversation. And if it's something that you really need done, saying to them, look, if you can't get this done, it's really important that you let us know so that we can find someone else who can take care of it. We've had to do that with one member of our team because his work just got way overwhelming. He's been very close to a stress leave and actually is now on a stress leave from his work, and he does volunteer with us. And so what we all decided is we decided as a team that we were going to pull back his responsibilities, and we just let him know that we took his responsibilities. No insult, no anything else, but we want him to get better so that he's not, getting a break from work and taking over a whole pile of stuff remotely. Aaron said, while I like working and managing remotely, my preference would be a hybrid. Agreed, Aaron, I like the same. Everything becomes a thing. You can't quickly nip something in the bud by popping by someone's desk, and you have to schedule a meeting. That always makes things feel like a bigger deal than they are. Agreed. I fully agree, Aaron, and I'm going to talk to that a little bit later as well. Beth, I'd also like to add, more as an employer, find out why they're disengaged, missing due dates. There may be more to the story, and provide accountability between employer and employee. Absolutely. Thanks, Beth. I fully agree. Have that conversation. What's going on? It doesn't always have to be, it's letting them know and then saying, okay, what's going on? So this gentleman told us he was burning out at work. So we said, okay, here's how we're going to help. And that's the whole idea when I talked about that definition of leadership, is that when we're all personally responsible, that means saying things like, I'm burnt out. I can't do this right now. I have 2 kids at home. One is crying every week. I can't take this on. Can somebody help me? Or I can do this part of it. Can somebody help me? So it's really important that we all get to that place and that it's safe to do so. Okay, so we talked a little bit about team meetings. So make sure that there is that time for the informal chat. And one-on-ones still need to happen. And I suggest that the teams do this as well. So not you as a leader need to have one-on-ones still with your team. And for those exact reasons, the question that Malik just brought up, for that exact reason, then sometimes people don't want to say in front of the whole team, I'm struggling. So have those one-on-ones and let them talk. And I mean, I can't really talk about this right now without talking about the whole idea of COVID and how it changed the world for everybody. For me, very little changed. I've been working virtually for years. And as I said, I've been leading virtual teams for years. So not much changed as far as that went, but what did change, and I didn't realize it initially, was I never got a break. I was at the point where I was starting to have, I'll say anxiety, because the moment I'm in the basement and the moment my foot hit the bottom step, my stepdaughter's door would open every time. So I never got a break. I went from being business owner, doing all my business stuff. And when I'd go up to have a snack where it was time to let my brain go, I had to go up and deal with my stepdaughter who was crying because she had to do math with no tutor. They have someone in her class that was helping her out, and she didn't have that here. So that's what I was dealing with initially. I didn't realize how much that took on. So making sure there's someone around to have those conversations. Again, it's different for me. I could just put some things aside or call a client and say, okay, it's going to be this date instead of that one. That was probably in some cases not as big of a deal, or I'd work late into the evening when it worked out for me. But if you're working on a team, that could be happening for people. And we all had a lot of extra stress right in our home, right? So yeah, check in. I really like it. I'm glad Beth mentioned that yes, definitely check in. What's going on? How can we help? Very important. So make sure you're still having those one-on-one meetings. And then I'm going to add, without sharing too many, but feel free in the chat if you want to share. Make sure you have some kind of project or communication platform to work, because here's what's happening to people. We're getting overwhelmed with email. And then when you try and go back and find the email with the information that you were looking for, you can't find it because there's too many emails. So find something. I've personally used Trello. I have used it, but it was, again, very small team. So 3 or 4 people. It wasn't as effective when there were 3 or 4 people because people kept forgetting to go back and check. But one-on-one projects, it works very, very well. I think there's Microsoft Teams. I think there's another one called Mondays or something as well. So find something like that where you can put the information up and it'll stay there. And then people know where to go and find it and not have to search through 100 emails. Because if there's 5 people on a team, sometimes we go, did that email come from John or did it come from Paul? So you kind of have to think it through. I just saw a couple of comments. Yes, people's lives are definitely made up of other things, Aaron, agreed. During a pandemic and during normal times. Beth, as a leader, focus on the relationship, ask standard open-ended questions during the one-on-one meetings. Yep, get employees comfortable with sharing not just work updates, but stresses and successes. That'll make it so much easier for them to open up when there's more stresses, whether voluntarily or when being asked directly. Agreed. And that's why I go back to that when I gave that definition at the beginning. It is so important that you create the environment where they're able to do this. So if you want your people talking to you, you need to create an environment where they're able to do that. And that brings us into where I wanted to go into leadership responsibility. So our responsibilities are to foster trust, encourage open dialogue, and clarify goals and guidelines. So we all know trust is easy to lose and really hard to get back. So I discussed a little bit at the beginning the importance of being congruent with your vision and mission as well as your values, because that's how you build that trust. So again, if you're the friendliest place and you're yelling at people in the background, not okay. If you're saying to people, to Beth's point, hey, come and talk to me, but then they come and talk to you and you go again, or roll your eyes, or you cut them off, or you don't deal with their problem. Worst thing I've ever heard, and it was actually in a volunteer organization. I went to one of the leaders, and they were volunteers, but I went to one of the leaders, sort of the next step up from where I was, and I said, look, here's a problem we're running into, and it's actually causing a problem because people can't meet their goals unless they're able to travel. And some people aren't. This is a volunteer role. They can't necessarily travel. So I said, this is what's going on. And her response to me was, well, you should see what's going on in China. Excuse me. No offense to what's going on in China. And I appreciate that it's possibly, probably tougher for them, but that's not my issue. And I needed my issue dealt with. It was incredibly dismissive. And I've had to bring it up again 2 or 3 more times, and I'm still not getting responses with it. So it becomes very frustrating. So that's, again, you want that congruency. So now I've brought you a problem and you've dismissed it. Am I going to bring any more? Probably not. Or I'm going to go around you and find somebody else who can help. So think about how you're reacting to things, because how you're reacting is what's going to create that environment or not create it. So and to this slide's point, is what's going to foster that trust and what isn't. It's also really important to deal with things when they happen. I think it was Beth who talked about that little things get bigger. I am a mediator. Darren mentioned that at the beginning. So the alternative dispute resolution is mediation training. And I've been called into more mediations since December, or sorry, the same number of mediations since December as I have been called into in the last 6 years. Mediation is not something I advertise hugely on my website. It's in there, but it's under consulting, and it's not an obvious thing, though I think I'll make it more obvious now because apparently it's needed a bit more. And I've been called into these, and what I'm seeing is that the more we're separated, the more we're creating stories in our heads. So if you think about, when you buy a new car and say you got a nice blue car when they were new and there was no blue cars around, you got this cool new color, got this awesome blue car, and then you start driving around and suddenly you see the blue cars everywhere. That's what's happening to people when they're separated, but in the negative way. So what I saw in the most recent mediations that I had to do was really little things that became like that, just exploded. So little rubs that were in your team that when everybody worked together, they went like, when everybody got separated. Because it's hard when you see someone every day to hold only a negative view of them. It's harder. It's possible that you can still, but it's harder because you see the other pieces that are going well. Particularly the last mediation I was in, that's what happened. One had decided that the other was just not helping and was not thoughtful and all of those things. And then everything that she did, even if it was minor, like they were working on one group comes in Monday, another group, so cohorts, I think they're calling them. So one group works Monday, the next group works Tuesday. And the one girl worked Thursday and wasn't coming back Friday. Well, she forgot her dish in the sink on Thursday. And then it became this big argument because these 2 women had decided that they were, this was just her behavior and she's just inconsiderate and that's it. So it's harder to see when you're not together to be reminded of all of the good things of that person. So the little rubs suddenly get really big because you don't have to talk if you don't want to. You don't have to run into each other in the hall and make the conscious choice to be rude, or, it's just people are separated. And the more we're separated, the more those stories get created. So the more red cars we're seeing, or the more, that type of thing. We tend to lose our environmental cues. Yes, thank you. That's a great word. Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, we lose our environmental cues. And with all of the stress on all of us, it's just making it that much worse. So you do need to make sure that you're having those conversations, that everyone's having those conversations, and that you deal with things. Whether that's, I'm not suggesting you deal with it all yourself, but if you're seeing someone kind of go down a dark road or complaining about their team member all the time, start saying to them, look, time to have a conversation. Let's talk about this. Maybe go talk to that person. It's really important to do that. And to keep those communication open, because yes, you need the environmental cues again, which means you have to get together and talk. And just so everyone knows, I was somewhat skeptical, but the mediation I did, the last one, we were still on the stay-at-home order, so we had to do it virtually, and it worked out fine. So it is possible these difficult conversations can happen virtually. It's not ideal, but it works. So again, make sure that you're dealing with that person. And I think Beth already mentioned it, but when I say deal with it, sometimes people hear discipline. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying go talk to them, find out what's going on, do some investigating, see what's going on. Maybe it means spreading the work for a while. Maybe it means changing what they do. Maybe it means letting them work at different hours. There's tons of things that could work out. So it's not always discipline that you need to go to. Isabella, I really encourage everyone to always focus on the issues related to the tasks and not the individuals involved. Yes, this greatly reduces anger and disappointed towards people and gets the team focused on finding a solution. Agreed. And there's actually little tricks you can do with that, that you can take the attention away from everyone. I don't know if it works as well virtually, but when I'm in a mediation, I always have a whiteboard or papers so that when people start to do the, like, well, you're being a jerk or calling each other names, I pull their attention back to the whiteboard because the problem is written at the top of the whiteboard. And so I say, okay, let's go back to here. And it like completely physically turns their attention to the problem so that they're not focused on each other anymore. So the next piece, and we've touched on it already a little bit, but encourage that open dialogue. Communicate, 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 and then communicate again. And that includes both talking and listening, especially now through COVID. We need to be listening to people. They may not be able to share in the way that we want to hear it, but we need to be listening to hear what's going on in the background. And encourage them to do the same with their teammates. So it's not all on the leader. You want your team working together. So it's not all on you to take all of this over. And I have a couple of questions, but I'll go through the slides and then I'll ask the question. As the leader, you need to be aware. You need to be aware of the potential problems arising, which is why it's so important to have both those team meetings and those one-on-ones. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to handle all the problems, but it does mean you need to encourage those conversations. Because again, the longer something goes on, the more stories people will create in their head. And I'd planned to talk about mediations there, but well, we already did. So there is a question. So someone from Anonymous, as a person in the team member position, not leader, how would you handle a situation where the leader is the one causing the stresses within the team, i.e. the leader is difficult to get in contact with and provides a lackluster guidance regarding our mission, which in turns make the leader thinks it is the team who is not performing accordingly. That's called managing up, and it is a skill. When it's the leader, you don't actually have to have the title to be the leader. I have worked on teams where there was someone in the team who was a far better leader than the leader themselves. And so what they did was they showed up for other people. And I've done that as well in teams where we weren't getting the answers we needed from our boss, so we found them elsewhere. Once we had the answers, we just moved forward in that direction, whether the boss was helping or not. I would say as a last, I try and have those conversations with them as well, without saying, hey, you're not leading very well. Say something to the effect of, just curious, we wanted to move forward this way, but we need some information, and asked specifically for the information. Sometimes what's happening, if you've ever done personality assessments, pull that back out, because what I've discovered is people do the personality, so DISC, True Colors, Myers-Briggs, any of those things, and then we put them back up on the shelf. Pull it back out and try and figure out what they are. If you've never done one, I'll put my information in here after, and I'll share with you how to do that and how to figure out what the other person is. And use that information, their personality information, as the way to communicate with them. Sometimes what happens is we've got someone who's very people-oriented, who's leading a team of task-oriented people, or someone who's task-oriented, who's leading people who are very people-oriented, and then we don't communicate well. So without more information than that, try having the conversations, but really think about what type of personality they are. And like I said, if you're struggling with that, at the end, I'll put in my information and just give me a call and I'll walk you through it. Probably the easiest thing to do, Same deal though, as talking with, if you're not the leader, as when you are the leader, there's something going on for that person, whether they think they've communicated, it's just not communicated in a way that worked for you guys. So they need to be aware of that and just say, well, I need this from you. And then being really clear on what your needs are. Without, obviously, with so many people listening, I don't want you to go into too much detail, but that's at least a start. So the same as being the leader, go and find out what's going on. And then be really honest. Look, we're missing some information here. I wanted to, and be very clear and fact oriented. Okay, this is what I needed, but, and this is where I'm trying to get to, and this is the information I need. So try and stick to the facts. But again, go back and look at that personality, because I'm thinking if you're dealing with someone who's very people oriented, they're going to want to know about feelings. They're going to want to talk about their feelings. So that might be important to them. Okay, awesome. Heather, love the information on how to assess your team member's personality without having to go through the whole colors, etc. Yeah, you can, it's really not hard. There's some free ones, but there's also kind of really good indicators. And I also share, when I do them, I have handouts that I share on people under stress, because people act very differently under stress and they look like they're a different personality. So you can start to see, oh, wait a minute, all I've ever known of this person is being under stress. So they look like they're, I'll just use DISC because that's the one I'm using recently. They look like they're a D, but they're not, they're a C. They're a frustrated C and they're looking like a D at the moment. So yeah, communicate, make sure that you're talking and listening and you're encouraging the team to do the same. I had someone take, I have a course that I run called Leading with Ease, and it's a mixture between teaching and coaching. And I had a girl come in and she didn't recognize how much leadership she provided to that team. And one of the things she did, and she just did this consistently, when someone would come to her as the leader to complain about someone else, she would say, how about you go talk to them about that? And just that one little sentence changed the whole culture of her team, because now they stopped coming to the supervisor to complain and they started speaking to each other. Now, if you go and complain about someone, your words are much harsher than when you go to their face. So the team actually started working together much better. And she's fairly young. So I said to her, I was like, you have no idea. That's one of those things that why I say we don't know how we add value. That one little sentence has made a huge impact on your team. And that's what you need to do. Sometimes it's a very little sentence. How about you guys go talk about that? And so last but not least, clarify the goals and guidelines. So communicate them, check in and communicate again, in person or not in person. We've all walked away from a meeting where we heard something and somebody heard something else. So check back in and communicate again. And because it's online, you may have to review more often. That does not mean micromanage. That means just check in. Are you doing okay? Making sure we're on the same page. And again, this doesn't mean send another email. Have a quick conversation. If you're I've recently worked with a coach who is a huge believer in 15-minute meetings. So when we call, if I call for something, it's 15 minutes. We know exactly what we're discussing and it's done. Doesn't mean there's no niceties in there. It just means that we're like, okay, this is what we needed to discuss and it's done. So you can really get those meetings down to 15 minutes if need be, or even less, as long as it's clear. So as discussed again, have a way to share the information that's not email, because we've all gotten overloaded with email in the last while. Maybe a virtual pin board of some kind. Make sure everyone is aware of where they can find the information so that they're not searching and always looking for you to do that. And so that was the bulk. Thanks everybody for participating so much. Appreciate that very much. And I don't think I missed anything. I see Beth said it's also important to empower employees to develop the relationships amongst their team members. Yes, setting up one-on-ones with each other is very important. Agreed. Heather, I'll throw my information in the chat at the end here. I always do, you can go to my website or any of my social media and you'll find I do free 20-minute calls whenever. So you just go to my calendar and set up a time that works for both of us, and it'll set up a Zoom meeting for you. Beth, I love social styles, very similar to Two Colors, and integrate it in all my coaching. Yeah, I find it really important because I think I like the way Disc does it because I find it easier. I'm just going to stop sharing now. Oops. There we go. I find it easier to explain to people, and the information as far as leadership goes is really helpful. It's really easy to find what you need from people. So I'm just going to, I'm going to give you 3 links. One's my website, one's my email, and the other is that the way that you can just book the 20-minute appointments. Oops. It's not wanting to let me do that. There we go, copy. And paste. So there's the information. But yeah, feel free, don't feel bad about setting up a call. It's no obligation, it's nothing than that. I'd love to have these conversations. Heather, I used to use OneNote to document our one-on-one meetings with clear action steps, good place to attach docs. Awesome. I know someone else who uses OneNotes as well, and he found it very good as well. There we go. I can see all that. And just checking Q&A. Okay, answer live. Done. Okay, so I'm going to close up the Q&A, but we still have a couple more minutes. Do you have any questions, comments, concerns? Beth McCauley, see what features are in your HR management system. Yeah, you may already have it. A lot of companies already had them. It's just a matter of learning how to use them and then making sure the team uses them. So when I was leading the team at Toastmasters, again, we were very geographically diverse. One of the things I put together was this Trello board, but I couldn't get them to go back in it. So I kept saying to them, go check the Trello board, but we only lead that team for a year. So by the time they kind of started to get used to it, it was too late. But presumably your teams will last longer than my team did. So so just get used to doing that. And then just like I said, with the girl I was working with, it's those one little sentences that sometimes make all the difference. Those repeated one sentences. Go talk to your teammate. If you're struggling with that team member, go talk to them. If, hey, it's on the Trello board, please go check the Trello board. Because the more you say it, the more people will go, before they call you, will say, oh, I should check the Trello board. Or Microsoft Word, or not Word, Microsoft, is it Microsoft One? Or anyway, there's a Microsoft One, or whatever your HRIS system is, they may have something like that. My apologies, I am definitely not the expert in that. Trello is the one, but like I said, if anybody else knows of another one, please share. OneNote, like I said, I think I have a client who used OneNote and really liked it. So any other questions, comments, concern? I hope this was helpful. Basecamp and Slack. Cool. I've heard of Basecamp, but I've never used it. Awesome. I see Darren's back.
Yes. And it's just, I mean, if people still want to anyways, ask some questions, but just before we, kind of come to the end of our time anyways, I do want to thank Lisa for taking the time to put on this webinar for us today. I hope you all did find some value and information out of it. As Lisa has said, she's provided her contact info. So if you care to reach out, I'm sure she can help you give guidance, but as well, if anybody's ever interested in her services for your company or anything else, by all means, I do suggest, take a look at her website and see what she brings. But I do want to also point out as well, for those of us, for alumni events anyways, we do have some upcoming webinars as well that continue on as we, try to stay engaged with our alumni. We're putting together a whole suite of sort of webinars. So I'm just going to share the link anyways with our events page. Just take a look, see what we do have listed. Keep checking it and checking your emails as we do send out more information about webinars we're going to put together. And the other key thing for me is also staying connected as an alumni. Although you think maybe we do know about you and your information and where you're living, we're always sometimes not your first stop of updating your address with if you do move. So letting us know not only where you live, but also what you are doing, where you are in your career. Helps us to find people like Lisa to be able to come and speak to alumni. And that's part of what we want to do, is be able to have alumni helping alumni and engaging you with, these much needed sort of informational webinars. So, if the more we know about you, is the better we can be able to help connect our alumni together as well. So that's it for me, unless anybody has other questions, or at least wants to stay on and answer some. Or
I'll stay for a few more minutes, but I was just looking, it's mostly just thank yous right now. Yes, Michelle, can't wait to have in-person events again. Oh, interesting, there's events in Calgary. That's awesome.
Yeah, we've had a chapter out there anyways that has put some events now and then. So yeah, hopefully once we're back to the normal, we can talk more about some in-person events again.
I'm good with all the virtual. It's so much easier for me coming out of Timmins. It's hard to get to Toronto that often.
But keep in mind for everybody as well, homecoming, we again, we'll probably look to try to plan some virtual events and stuff. So, keep yourselves posted on that and what we will have provided. So.
Awesome.
Okay, well,
And someone said that Aaron said, got to hop off for a board meeting, ironically, with another Brock friend. Oh, that's awesome. Dawn is back at Brock working and teaching. That's great. Awesome. Well, thanks all. I'm not seeing any more questions coming in, so we'll give it a few more minutes just in case, but nothing in the Q&A either, it'll tell us. The chat worked not too bad. Usually it's hard to keep following with everything that goes up.
No, I think it worked out well. So and we'll look towards connecting with everybody afterwards the next day or so. Send out a survey just to get everybody's feedback on what they thought, and just even some thoughts on future webinars maybe you'd like to see.
Awesome. Brilliant. Okay. Well, that worked out well. So that's your first one under your under your belt.
First one of mine, but yeah, we've got lots more coming up. So again, thanks everybody for attending, and Lisa, again, thank you for your time, and
no problem.
hope everybody enjoys the rest of their day, and we'll kind of call this done and finished with. So again, thank you everybody. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks, Darren.